Okay, let's get started and hopefully some other people will join in. I'm aware of everybody's time and a lot of people are probably on their lunch hour. So welcome everybody to the first of several webinars that we will be hosting. Today's session is with Amir Zuklo, and she's our new Social Enterprise Coordinator. So she's going to give you an overview today of the social enterprise model, and she'll be taking questions at the end of her presentation. And she'll also be telling you about another webinar we are hosting in 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that, and she'll give you all the details on how you can get in on that one as well. So I'll hand it over to you, Amir.
Okay, thank you, Christine. So my name, as Christine said, is Amir Zukalo. I'm the Social Enterprise Coordinator here at Community Sector Network, and we are putting together a program that will consist of a series of webinars about social enterprise. If your organization is looking to start a social enterprise, is curious about it, or might even be well on the way to a social enterprise. But before we get into it, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, particularly as we are coming out of the Truth and Reconciliation holiday. It's a good time to reflect about how we think about truth and reconciliation, both in our organizational work as well as our personal lives. So in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that the land upon which we gathered is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Epekiswik, Prince Edward Island, Mi'kmaqi, is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. We pay our respects to the Indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this land for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. So as I said, this is going to be a high-level overview of social enterprise, and it'll be similar to the presentation I gave at our annual general meeting about a month ago now. So we can go ahead and get started with the first slide, Christine. So social enterprise is really part of a larger revenue diversification strategy. So when we think about where nonprofits typically get their funding, we are most familiar with traditional strategies, which include grant funding from different levels of government, foundations, and supporting organizations, as well as individual donations and membership fees. Large gifts from major donors, or business and corporate memberships, or hosting events. So those are the traditional ways that over the years nonprofits have been able to raise funding. And while we don't want to completely step away from those traditional funding strategies, what we'd like to do instead is encourage nonprofits to employ a series of new strategies that allow for them to tap into unrestricted sources of revenue, so that they have a little bit more agency as to where they can spend the money coming in, as typical grant funding usually is restricted to project-based work, and it can be hard to fill in the gaps around administrative costs or overhead costs for nonprofits. So the new strategies that we look at are contracts, fee for service, social enterprise, and partnerships. And today we'll focus specifically on social enterprise, but it is part of this larger revenue diversification strategy. So before we get into that, we're just going to look at what's called a money mindset. And everybody, through their own personal experience and how you grew up and what your relationship to money is different. And there's a huge psychological piece around money that can sometimes override how much money there actually is in reality. So the way we think about money is different. So we do have a social enterprise guidebook where you can fill out a series of questions to determine what type of money mindset you have, and then how you bring that money mindset to your organization, and how it might even work differently with other money mindsets in your group. So it's just important to note the frame of reference that you're personally coming from. And then as well, on the next slide, how this impacts what can be limiting beliefs around money in your organization. So historically, nonprofits can tend to think of themselves as lacking in money and always searching for money. And this limiting belief can impact how you roll out different programs in your organization or how you're able to pay people for the work that they do. And there's different ways that we can turn those limiting beliefs into empowering beliefs. And there's more guidance on that in the workbook as well that's online. So we can go to the next slide. So what is social entrepreneurship? It's similar to traditional entrepreneurship in the sense that you're building something and creating an organization, but rather than just having your profit as your main goal in your organization, you're also looking to have a sustainable mission that is going to create some social value. So in addition to generating revenue, we're also looking to create social value from our mission. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the role of social enterprise is to help communities build up social capital. Throughout these efforts, we can also generate revenue, which can return that financial surplus to the organization to further fund projects. And it allows organizations to diversify their revenue stream and gain access to unrestricted funding. So like any business model, we have to look at operating strategy that includes both internal organizational structure as well as external partners, and then tie that to creating our intended impact. So most organizations are quite familiar with creating your vision and your mission statements for the work that you do as a nonprofit. So your vision statement is what describes your desired or future state and your long-term aspiration. So it's bold and overriding. And then your mission statement drills down more into your purpose and how you're going to carry out the actions that you need in order to accomplish your vision statement. And it focuses more on your short-term and present goals. But having both of these together tie into a really powerful framework, which will then guide all of your decision making and establish the culture of your organization. So when considering a social enterprise, you want to be aware of the fact that the social enterprise needs to tie into the vision and mission statement that your nonprofit has. So that will be the way that the social enterprise will bring the most benefit and be the strongest if it's in line with the values that are articulated in both your vision and mission statements. So developing an effective vision statement consists of looking for something that's really audacious. It's a dream that you have beyond what you think is possible, the mountaintop that you're striving to reach. But you do need to make sure it's rooted in your existing assets. So you want to be aware of what the reality is of your organization while you're looking to what you can do going forward. It should be inspiring and motivating. It should be looking in a forward direction. It should be inspiring to both the staff that you have, as well as your other key stakeholders. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. It should give everyone who's working as a sense of purpose. Oh, Ashley Travis says, we can't see all the slide content. I'll just pause and see if Christine can address that.
We are aware of that. We're trying to figure out how to turn it down.
I'll just give her a minute. But I can talk a little bit about how a social enterprise can be related to your nonprofit organization. So there's 3 different sort of models around social enterprise. One of the key pieces that's really critical is unlike a bank or an electrical or energy company that have now taken to adopting a series of environmental and sustainable goals that really sort of end up on the back piece of their annual reports. A social enterprise is different in that it's threaded through the mission and the purpose of the whole business. So those environmental and sustainable goals delivered by banks and energy companies, although important, they're really and they're not key to their business purpose. The purpose of their businesses is to generate profits for their shareholders, but then they have those external goals that they try to accomplish, but they're not a key ingredient as a part of their overall business structure. And so that's how a social enterprise differs, is it's really the purpose is integrated throughout the whole mission and is equal to generating revenue in terms of the level of importance. So there's different ways that we can integrate social enterprise into a nonprofit. It can be what's called embedded, integrated, or external. And an embedded social enterprise is really where the enterprise and the social business and the nonprofit are one and the same. And the product or service that's being provided is directly solving the problem that your social mission is looking to solve. And a really good example of that is something called Sanergy, which is portable toilets that have been developed for basically slums or communities where there's not access to good sanitation. So they develop those portable toilets, and then they hire folks in those communities to help with the delivery and maintenance of those portable toilets. So they're solving the problem of sanitation. They're creating employment for folks that would otherwise be struggling to find employment in their area. And then they also collect the waste and treat it, and then use that as fertilizer for farmers in the community. So it's really a circular model where the whole mission of what they're trying to accomplish, which is improve sanitation, is really key to the social enterprise. So that would be what's called an embedded model. And then we can have an integrated model where the business activities overlap with social programs, although the end goal of the activity might not be solving the problem that the organization is most invested in. So these are typically seen in programs where you're trying to get people in vulnerable communities either introduced to the workforce or reintroduced to the workforce. So you're creating an employment opportunity for those individuals either through a shop or a product, and then those services and products are being sold to the community. And those sales or the revenue generated from those services might not be integral to the social mission, but the reintroduction of people into the employment sector is accomplishing the objective of the social mission. So that, and then the last one is external, where a nonprofit could run a social enterprise that's entirely independent and unrelated to the social mission, but the profits from that social enterprise are being directed back into the organization. So of the three models, people are trying to get to the embedded model, as that will create the most benefit, as it's the most cohesive sort of package of social enterprise, although it can be hard to accomplish that. So ideally, if you can, you would like your model to be integrated, where the business activities overlap somewhat with social programs, because that helps to tie directly back to the vision and the mission statement. So it looks like we may have solved our issue with the screen. So we'll go to the next slide. Or maybe not. Oh, here we go. Okay, and the next slide. Great. So a mission statement is a more direct action statement surrounding the work that you do every day towards your vision and why you do it and what the intended impact is. So we're looking at our cause and our actions, and then what our impact is and how we are changing things for the better. So when you look at social enterprise, you can make some direct comparisons to the for-profit industry. So the primary goal for the for-profit businesses, so the banks, energy companies that I mentioned before, is to make a profit, whereas a social enterprise in the nonprofit sector is looking to fulfill a social mission. As a result of this, the culture can be quite different. In the for-profit sector, the decision-making can be quite quick. In the nonprofit sector, we can have multiple layers, multiple stakeholders, including a board. The for-profit sector, the investment is usually around infrastructure. And in the nonprofit social enterprise area, the bulk of the resources is being directly applied back into services in the community. The priorities are different. For the for-profit business, it's entirely a financial goal, whereas the nonprofit, they're looking to achieve both social and financial goals. And then the focus for the nonprofit sector is going to be largely driven by the customer base, whereas for the nonprofit social enterprise, we're going to have to look to deliver both to the clients in the community as well as to the customers who are going to be using our service or product. So the challenge with social enterprise, some of these are similar to the challenges that any entrepreneurial endeavor faces. So most small businesses fail within the first 3 years, and social enterprise is certainly not immune to those pressures that regular for-profit businesses face. So they will be challenged by market forces that impact all small businesses. But because we have this additional social value that we're trying to obtain, it'll be even more complex because that environment will be different than the for-profit sector. So nonprofits, as you're aware, are accountable to multiple stakeholders, the clients, the community, funders, investors, customers. So when you implement a business, even if the people are not all the stakeholders are not directly involved in the social enterprise, they will face additional challenges resulting from those activities. So you have to be aware that when you take this on, that your staff or your volunteers who might not be involved may still face additional pressures as a result of those social enterprise activities. So we can go through a series of phases when we're looking to develop a social enterprise. The first one being your vision and your objectives, and making sure that the social enterprise is going to be well integrated into your organization and its vision and mission. Then you go through phase 2, which is just a general brainstorming session where I always say there's no bad ideas in a brainstorm. Generate as many ideas and identify the opportunities. And then from there, you can filter through a pre-feasibility analysis to see what of those ideas are the most realistic. And then when you get to the feasibility study, this would probably be a piece where you would be looking to hire some outside facilitators who have experience conducting feasibility studies, where you really get into the financial forecasting and the resources, infrastructure that you would need to carry out this business before you launch into a business plan, which would be your full fleshed out business plan, including your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, your market, your challenges, your distribution networks, seeing who your competitors are, because even if your social enterprise is providing a particular product or service, there could be a number of for-profit businesses that are also providing similar products and services that you'll have to be aware of that competition. And then you would get into your launch and startup phase. And then you would want to see, after a certain amount of time, do a performance measurement, both on the financial side as well as the social impact side, and make sure that the actions that you're carrying out actually are creating the impact that you desire. And then with that knowledge in mind, you can go back and adapt and evolve and decide how you're going to grow and reinvest now that you've been informed with how your enterprise is being carried out in the real world. So before you begin, you want to sort of assess how your organization is ready to undertake this. So you would create in your strategic plan how you would accomplish that mission statement, recognizing that operating a profitable business will definitely challenge your organization. So there could be some internal change that you will have to manage in a positive way. So you could look back and see what other challenges your organization has faced in the past and how you've managed to handle those, communicate with your staff and your board in order to take those on and have a clear path, because change is always sort of a daunting thing to undertake, but a well mapped out plan can help people to embrace that change rather than be afraid of it. There'll be some conflict as we prepare for this different perspective around for-profit culture, which can conflict with nonprofit cultures. There might be some uncomfortability around making money in the nonprofit sector. Rather than thinking of it as profit, I like to think of it as revenue generation in order to fulfill a social mission. And to me, that the way that language is adopted is a much better fit to what we're actually trying to do rather than just creating a profit. We're actually looking to generate money in order to do more of the good work that we're seeking to do. And then you want to look at your financial management. Do you have money set aside for feasibility studies? Are you able to access some grants in order to conduct them? You need to develop a reasonable sales projection to make sure that this isn't going to be a drain on your organization without the future benefit of revenue coming in down the road. And then look at your financial management track record in the past and make sure you're really set up to start off on a good foundation for this. You need to determine whether or not the social enterprise is going to be cost effective. So you'd be looking at all the resources and infrastructure that are part of your inputs that would then produce the desired outputs in terms of products and services, as well as the social outcomes in the community. You want to make sure that the personnel that you have, either staff, volunteer, board members, are willing to take this on. And the learning curve could be steep, depending on what their experience is in business and setting key performance metrics. So you'll have to make sure that everybody's ready to be guided on this road. And so just to reiterate, before you get too far ahead in your planning, it's important to sit down with all the stakeholders, even some of the clients, and make sure that everybody understands the concept of what you're trying to accomplish and that people are excited to undertake it and can see the benefits of bringing this unrestricted revenue and sometimes a new way to reach out to the community and become a bigger player in the community. So we'll look at now not from a more external perspective. All of the outside stakeholders should be informed and supportive. So those would be your larger donors, your larger granting agencies. You should also know who your competitors are, both from the for-profit sector as well as other potential competitors in the social enterprise space. You could also reach out to those competitors and see if they could become potential allies. And then you need to start preparing to set aside a certain amount of resources in order to plan for this enterprise. A lot of these, I will say, start off as a off the side of your desk operation, but eventually, in order to be successful, there needs to be a considerable amount of time and energy and dedication put into it. So even if they start small initially, you'll need to start thinking about how to assign dedicated staff and resources down the road. And then you'll need to make sure that there is adequate business resources. So a lot of members of different boards, we can just go to the next slide, Christine. A lot of members of boards may have business experience or accounting experience, but if you don't, then you should try to connect with somebody with specific experience in the industry or sector that you're looking to get into. You may even want to convene a business advisory group outside your board or staff, and these people will be really critical for giving you the pieces of advice on the business end that will help with your marketing strategy, your sales strategy, your distribution, different business things like that. And then you'll need to really champion the initiative. So everybody will want to be on board in order to move this idea forward. And as I mentioned before, you should be in a strong financial position with your record keeping and accounting, because you'll need to track this separately from other aspects of your nonprofit. As well, you'll have to think about the staff who may need different skills in order to run the business, or maybe even produce the product that you're looking to make or deliver on the service. And that could be accomplished either through hiring new individuals or reskilling your existing staff. But you'll need to gather people who have expertise in the area of the business that you're going to be running. And then you'll need to look at what your resources are before the launch. So do your funders have any grants that you could be doing R&D and startup and implementation? There are a few grants offered through the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency to start social enterprises. So that could be something you would be looking at. Do you have the capital reserves? Is the board do they recognize the long-term planning that's going to need to go into this? If you have multi-year grants, are those funders on board with starting a social enterprise? If your social enterprise doesn't generate profit for a few years, are you able to carry it with other revenue streams? So these would all be business considerations that you would need to look into. And then you can just look through your social impact framework. So this is a measurement tool that allows you to identify and capture the social value that you're creating. So you set clear objectives and social metrics. So this would also be something that you would do with someone who has a lot of experience and expertise in impact measurement. So that would, oh, someone has a question. I'll type it in the chat. So ACOA is a branch of the federal government that is specific for Atlantic Canada, and they have a series of programs. And I can send I have a link, and I'll share it with Christine, and she can send it around with information about the next webinar that where ACOA has specific funding opportunities for social enterprise. Yeah, so the social impact framework is where you would want to engage someone who has expertise in impact measurement and evaluation and logic models. And we'll have more discussion on that in a later webinar. At a very high level, because I'm certainly not an expert in this area, but I can point you in the direction of some experts if you wanted to engage a contractor. But they do measurement to see whether the objectives that you've set out are actually being accomplished through your actions, through measuring a series of key performance indicators and metrics that are easily measurable. So those are determined prior to conducting the measurement. And then you measure the effectiveness of your social intervention, and then identify whether the goals you set out are actually being achieved, and then how you do a feedback to make sure if they aren't being achieved, how do you either change the actions that you're undertaking to create the value or the impact that you want. So a really great way to get a sort of full understanding of how all the bits and pieces that go into a social enterprise is to run through a social impact canvas. So you have a broad description of your impact, what you want to change in the community, how things could be better or different. And then you break out your priority outcomes that will, that you think the individual outcomes that will overall achieve that impact, and then how you measure whether or not you're making progress to those outcomes, and then what you do strategically to get to those outcomes. So this is a way, this canvas is a way of breaking out your social enterprise to make sure that you're delivering on the overall impact that you're seeking to. And that was the last slide for this. So we can open it up for any questions. But before we do, I'll just say that there's another webinar coming up in 2 weeks on Wednesday, August 16th, with Andy Horsnell, who is with Social Enterprise Solutions from Nova Scotia. And he's going to give the Social Enterprise 201, so more details around the social enterprise, including different marketing opportunities, challenges, funding, identifying opportunities. So you can stay tuned for that. He has a lot of expertise in this area, so I think it will be very informative. And then from there, we'll be giving a webinar roughly every 2 weeks on all the different aspects of social enterprise, from sales and marketing strategies to impact measurement and evaluation to delivering effective pitch presentations. And if you are an organization who is already running a social enterprise or has some concrete ideas around a social enterprise, we're also doing an intake for a small cohort that will be able to go through a series of in-person workshops in the new year with some facilitators who will be able to take you from where you are to the next level of where you want to be with your own project. So we can open it up for questions. If there are any questions.
I will mention, Mayor, that everybody today who's participating, when the Eventbrite link is available for the next one with Andy, I'll be sending that out directly to them so they can sign up for that.
Okay, it seems that nobody has any questions. This has been recorded, so it will be.
I'm sorry, Amir, I believe Gloria has a question.
Okay.
Gloria would like to know, do you offer one-on-one sessions?
I personally haven't offered any one-on-one sessions. We will have the opportunity to connect you with facilitators. If you have a specific question, you can email me and I can see who I can connect you with that would be most beneficial for what you're trying to understand, just because the social enterprise is such a broad area and there's many people who need different things. So yeah, you're welcome to email me and I can connect you with someone who could deliver a one-on-one session if it's not my area of expertise, if that answers the question.
John Doring has a question in the chat.
I have been researching different funding for startup costs, and I have found I'm starting to compile a list of different funding sources. So things tend to be quite specific about what you can and can't do with them. So we can, once that list is compiled, we can post some of those resources on the website. But I can't, off the top of my head, specifically think of one that is going to cover what you're asking. But I don't know if there is a cost, though, to register a nonprofit provincially. Alexia might have an answer for that. But I can find out. Is there any other questions? Okay, I'll put my name or my email in the chat. And if you have any questions that you think of later, you can email me them. And this webinar will be available on the website as well. The handbook that goes with the presentation slides that has more details is also available. And then next week, or in 2 weeks, Andy will be online and he will have even more information.
I believe Alexia just answered John's question.
Okay. Okay, that's what I thought. I didn't think it was quite as expensive as $1,500. So, all right. So I hope that was informative, and we look forward to seeing you for the next one.
Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.